Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel. And that channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. Pen review for you folks, a little bit of comparison. We're going to do things a little bit differently in 2026. We're going to try to compare pens, especially when those pens are major brand killers. I think we're talking about which pen? Well, we're talking about the Admok 766. I think Admok's taken a page out of ASVINE with their ASVINE V126. That vacuum filler, we look at the Pilot Custom 823 and we ask some questions. Is it a deja vu? Especially now that that Pilot Custom 823 has increased in price. Perhaps this is a Grail pen alternative, right? So let's take a look at it. Without any further ado, Fountain Pen Therapy presents the Admok 766 vacuum filler. Okay, so let's take a look at a pen. First thing I want to take a look at is, let's go on AliExpress, and I want to show you the different choices that you have for this pen, and then we'll take a look at the one that I've purchased. So let's just cut to my computer. Here we go. This is just a page out of AliExpress. As you can see, they call it the Admok 766. They actually put V126 there. So are they imitating the Pilot Custom 823 or are they imitating the ASVINE V126? It just goes to show you how things have changed. ASVINE is kind of at the top in my view, and so now they're copying ASVINE. You have a choice of different materials, as you can see. Milk coffee, starry black. You've got this green diamond, this green blue. But you notice the finials are different. So we're talking really about the three of them that are not cigar-shaped, if you will. The one I particularly have is this turquoise one that I'm not even sure is available. Oh, there it is. And what's interesting, you can get it either in the Admok nibs, either fine or medium. And if I've chosen a fine, and it's at $40. If you go to Bach, it's at $54. And if you choose the Schmidt nibs, they're at $54. I chose to go with the Admok. Most of my Admok pens do have Schmidt nibs, and maybe one of them even has a Bach. I decided that I would save the, $15 Canadian at $40. Let's take a look at that Admok nib and see what it gives. So there you have it. So those essentially your choices. Okay, and let's take a look at the pen. Here's the pen. Get the microphone out of the way. I think that this kind of black and brown amber or tortoise shell, I guess you can also refer to it, is really nice. I think it's probably the nicest one, in my opinion, of all of the colors that are being offered. As you can see, it does, and we'll take a look at it, comparisons in just a little bit, a minute or two. That resin is really, really nice, folks. Very deep, very nice. The The trimmings are all well integrated into the pen, so nothing is sticking out that's unusual. Nice finials. The polish is really nice. The clip is springy and functional. I think probably the band leaves a little bit to be desired. I think you can see the Admok name there is hardly noticeable. I think that the etching here, there is some texture to this, but it's so small, the band is so small, that I think they would have been better off with a bigger band, in my view. Also, notice there's some space between the band and the end of that cap, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that's essentially the outside. It's, of course, a vacuum filler, so you've got your bottom finial that unscrews. Now, I will not do it because, mind you, I can unscrew it, not a problem, because it's a vacuum filler, and it operates very nicely, thank you very much. Not an issue at all. A little bit of a loose there, which is required in order to make sure that it all functions properly. That's the outside. Let's just see how many turns to open it up. That's one turn. So it's about 1.5, 1.25, I would say to you. And if you look at the cap, this is one of the things that Pilot Custom A23, in my view, gets wrong, because it makes this portion of the cap very fragile. Let's take a look at inside the cap just right away, now that we're there, to see if it has any step downs there for, yes, it has a nice step down for sealing purposes. I can definitely see it. I don't know if you can see it. There you go, right there. So I think the previous experience with Admok pens is I've never had a dry nib issue, and it's become one of my pet peeves of pens, that if they dry, I have no tolerance for it. There you go. So that's the cap. The barrel, nice threading, very, nicely done. A little bit of texture there, but nothing, obtrusive. There's that nib, very, just kind of generic iridium point nib, Chinese nib, fine. So it doesn't even have an Admok branding on it, frankly. So fairly generic. We'll see how it writes. My experience is that sometimes those nibs can be, lack a little bit. But there you have it. A little bit of a flare, very comfortable. Does it post? It posts extremely well, comfortable, deep, and secure. So you get a nice posting with this pen if you need to post it. So there you have it. There is no ink window. So we don't know where we're at in terms of your level of ink. But that's the pen on the outside, folks. I think that's very nice. So the next thing, and I think one of the major things that I'd like to do with this pen, is to compare it with others. So let me set up the comparison, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here's the comparison I have for you. I have two other pens that resemble the design, and I have two other pens that resemble a little bit the resin, if you will. This is the Admok A08, an old model. That's probably one of the first Admok pens that I purchased in any event, and you can see that the resin is almost identical. This is my beautiful Leonardo Momento Zero Grande Sottobosco. I mean, you cannot compare, I think, the resin on the Leonardo with the Admok, in my view. But it gives you an idea of the difference, and also difference in size. The A08 is much smaller, and the Momento Zero Grande is longer. and I think even girthier. Then we get into the comparison of the pens, 3 pens actually, that resemble that design. Okay, you got of course the original Pilot Custom 823. You've got the ASVINE V126, and you have the Wingsung 699. Right away, you should note that the clip of the subject pen is much shorter than all the rest. It has that ball which resembles the Pilot Custom original. I think the ASVINE copies it a little bit better, and the 699 clip is completely different. As to the middle, the trimming here and the center band, as you can see, all of these 4 pens all have that same defect where they expose some of the cap resin, which makes it vulnerable to breaking and chipping. So none of them got that right in my view. But there you have it. Those are the comparisons of the pens capped. Here are the pens uncapped. The A08, of course, is much smaller than the rest. It also has a Schmidt number 5 nib. The Momento Zero Grande, of course, has got that number 8 La Fenice 18 karat gold nib. But the 4 similar pens here in terms of A23 lookalikes, you could see that I guess the V126 is slightly smaller, but I think 1, 2, and 3, the original, are pretty even. Then the 699 is slightly longer. You can see that there is an additional touch in these 3 pens with the gold band there, right beneath the threading. I think one of the major differences is that I think these pens can be dismantled in that position right there, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, won't do it because there's ink. Whereas the subject pen cannot be dismantled. So for cleaning purposes, you either remove the vacuum filler rod, or you unscrew the nib and go in that way. But there is a difference with, and I believe all these 3 can be unscrewed at this juncture there. So there you have it. And of course, both the original and the 699 have a little bit of translucency, allowing you to, in fact, even this ASVINE, the 3 of them, you can see kind of the ink level, which you cannot see, of course, in this resin, completely resin version of the Admok. So there you have the pens uncapped and unposted. Here are the pens posted, and you can see that the 4 lookalikes here, the 699 is the longest by a bit, but the 1, 2, and 3 are pretty even in terms of length. Of course, the Leonardo is a much bigger pen, and you can't compare really. It's really there just for the resin. And the 808 is much smaller. It's a smaller pen. So there you have the pens posted. We'll do some measurements and then the writing sample. For the writing sample, what I've decided is I've inked it up with this Leonardo Noche Moscata. Beautiful. These are the new bottles from Leonardo. I still haven't figured out whether or not the inks are different from the old one. I believe they're the same. It's just a repackaging on their part. So that's Noche Moscato. And here is a swatch of that ink on my swatch book. And it's right there. Is the sepia, okay? And I believe that the Noche Moscato is very, very similar. But why don't we do a swatching live? So that will give us an idea of whether or not we're dealing with the same ink. Hey, bonus here. We're going to swatch in my swatch book this new, no, not the same. So it's definitely not sepia. It's Noce Moscato, so it's a new ink, in my view. And very different from the sepia at the bottom. So there you have it. That's going to be the ink, and we'll fill it in a second once I've finished my writing sample. What notebook am we going to use? Well, for those of you who've followed me, we're going to be using a new notebook for my swatching, at least for a little while in 2026. I've chosen this Wonderland 222 notebook, which is a Tomo River original paper, and we will be doing our swatching in this notebook. So here we go. So the Admok 766. I'm just going to say brown and black. So far, so good, folks. Oh, let me just, yeah. Okay, the nib is what they call the Admok nib, which is pretty generic. Number 6, steel. The ink is Leonardo. Noce Moscato. Okay, now, in terms of performance, first of all, wetness. Keep in mind that this is a fine. I think it's very wet. It's a thick fine, if you will. At least that's what it looks like. In terms of smoothness, very smooth. Just a hint of feedback. Just so that you know you're dealing with a fountain pen. Consistency. Very constant. No skipping. No hard starts so far. So that nib is working out to be very nice. Thank you very much. Just saved myself $15. And you know what? You have so many nibs. We can always change, right? Reverse writing. Okay, you get a extra fine. Doable. Now, is this a go-to pen? By go-to, I mean, you know, is there anything that prevent me from using this pen on a daily basis? Absolutely not. Even around a conference table, it's not outlandish. 10 on 10 for go-to. Let me tell you, performs very, very well. I think we've covered all bases here. So let's do likes and dislikes. Well, The likes is first of all, I'm very surprised with the nib. So I'm going to start with the nib. I'm going to give this nib 8.5. It doesn't have any, oh, that's one thing we haven't covered, is bounce. It's stiff. Okay, so there really is no, there's no give in this. It's generic nail, if you will. The nib is fine. I like the material. I like the fact that it's a vacuum filler. Now, some people might say that it's a déjà vu of either the 823 or the V126. Okay. Now, vacuum fillers and ink windows, there's no ink window, but, you know, unless you have a transparent barrel, you know, ink windows in vacuum fillers are not often seen, but you have them. There's no ink window. It does post, so not a problem. In terms of value, you know, it compares to the V126 very nicely. They're both around, and look, and it varies depending on the seller, but they're about $40, I would say to you, Canadian, okay? And that's not with the other nibs, okay? So if you get the Admok nib, you're talking $40 Canadian, although you can probably find it even for 35. I would say between 35 and 40. And I've seen the V26 at about the same price. So, yeah, thumbs up for me anyway. Let me just sign this. Nothing spectacular, but I think it's a very functional pen, and I would give it an 8.5 on 10. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to do is, now that we have this other page on the other side, is I would like to do a comparison. And now, I think it would be very unfair to compare it to this original, but we must, right? If they're going to try to copy, well, so this is the Pilot and we're talking about a completely different league, folks. I mean, that nib is, first of all, you know you're writing with a gold nib. It's just a perfect nib, a really perfect nib. But let's compare it to the other two. Here's the ASVINE, and the ASVINE does have an ASVINE medium, eh? So it doesn't have anything fancy. And you know what? It's comparable to the point where you wonder whether or not they get their nibs done at the same place. In fact, this is a medium and this is a fine. Let's just next to each other. Can you see the fact that I mean, there is a slight difference. I think this is a little bit thicker, but they're very close. Very, very close. Then, of course, we got the Wingsung. Now, I haven't recently checked the price of the Wingsung, but I would probably venture to say, actually, give me a second. I'll let you know if it's cheaper or not. Check the price. As of the date that I've been did this video, we're talking about $35 roughly. You've seen some for $33, $35, $36 for the $6.99. So very comparable in terms of price. And this is the Wingsung. $6.99. Now, I can tell you that out of the 3 Chinese pens, the nib on this Wingsung is the best one. It's their original. I'm wondering, they have new number 8 nibs. I'm wondering if they're going to get new number 6 nibs just to make them prettier. This is a medium, by the way, but it's so much smoother. Really much, much smoother. So out of the 3, between the between the ASVINE, the Wingsung, and the Admok, so far I would have to give it to, I would say that the Wingsung, in terms of the nib, is number 1. I prefer the Admok over the ASVINE in terms of the nib. And then, of course, everybody has different colors and different materials used in each pen, and then it's up to you to choose which one. So that's a comparison, folks. I think it's a great pen. I think, despite the fact that it's a déjà vu, I think that Admok has done a good job. So $35, you get a vacuum filler that writes really well. If you want to add a Bock nib, I wouldn't add a Bock nib. I think this Admok nib is preferable over a Bock nib. That's my own point. It's a point of view. The advantage with Bock is that you can get maybe different sizes, extra fine, medium, broad, and maybe even a stub. Or you can go with the Schmidt nib. I would prefer the Schmidt nib, frankly, be it fine, medium, or broad, especially the broad on the Schmidt nib. They don't have stubs. But I think that with a pen like this, you can probably replace that nib. And I'm thinking about putting on this nib a stub nib from Stipula, and to see how that works out, and see if I can turn this pen into maybe something even more interesting. So give me a second. We'll put a stub nib on this pen and see how it writes. Be right back. I'm back. Something I want to do this year with my pen reviews is maybe do a little nib replacement once in a while when things can work out. It took me a little while to find one that I could adapt. Let me explain to you why it was difficult to figure out a good replacement. So we'll go to my overhead camera and I'll show you. I had a series of nibs here that I tried with feeds, etc. Let me just switch. Here we go. Now, what was peculiar, and I'm going to get my fingers all dirty, but is that nib, you see the way it has those little notches, fit into this feed precisely. So if I put any other nib that doesn't have those notches, I couldn't get it in. Then, of course, you got to try to find a nib section that can actually screw into that pen. And I guess that's one of the advantages if you order a Box and even Schmidt. I think even Bock is probably easier to replace. So I couldn't, I had to find, and I managed to find one that looked like this. This, I think, is ebonite, and it fitted in nicely. And you'll see I chose the brown color. I have another one like this. I forget where I bought these. It may have been on FP nibs. I forget. But I went into my stash and I did manage to, here you go. So you have a brown ebonite feed with that Stipula stub. So I managed to find a replacement, but I think you'll have to play with your pens. You got to, over time, you accumulate different nib sections, etc., and you see what you could do. So let's see if this pen writes as nice as I think it will write. Let me just, yeah, here we go. So this is the Admok Yeah, beautiful. 766. But it has a stipula stub. And I think it's like a 0.09. And this ink is gorgeous, by the way. Buttery smooth. So, you know, I've got a different pen now. Completely different pen. Smooth writer, very nice, ebonite feed, and you know what? We'll give it a go. The only danger, of course, is if that thing leaks. We shall see if it leaks, because it's not a perfect match. I think they weren't meant to be together. I'm trying to match them up, so to speak. So we shall see if it works. And stay tuned. Pen Revisited is for those purposes. On my weekly recap, for those who don't know, I put out a weekly recap every Sunday morning of a series of things. I review pens, I review inks, I do ink swatching, we do some writing, we introduce new paper, we take a look at pen reviews, we take a look at the market, and one of the sections is Pen Revisited. I revisit some of my pens that either reviewed the previous week or that are in the currently inked, and that will serve that purpose. So stay tuned. We shall eventually revisit this pen and see if it leaks or not. Otherwise, that Admok nib is just fine, folks, for $40. Please subscribe. If you enjoyed this review, please let me know. The likes are nice. And the alert bell and whatever else you need to click. Thank you very much. Enjoy your pens, folks. Be well.